To many of you, it may seem a tad inelegant for me to actually show up here.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kevin Kline.
I can't help thinking that in order to give these prestigious awards even more cachet, by all rights, I should be dead. But, and I thought about that.
But to the delight of his legions of fans, actor Kevin Kline continues to grace stages and film screens as he has for the past 3 decades. Although this St. Louis native now lives in New York, Kline is quick to credit hometown influences with the success he enjoys today. Kevin Delaney Kline was born October 24th, 1947, the oldest son and second of 4 children of Robert and Peggy Kirk Kline. Bob Kline came from a Cincinnati, Ohio family that owned and operated a chain of department stores across the Midwest. In his youth, the elder Kline's love of classical music led him to train in New York to become an opera singer. After he married Peggy and moved to St. Louis in the early 1940s, Bob Kline became an avid supporter and a singer in the chorus of the St. Louis Opera Guild. Kline also supported the St. Louis Symphony, and he and Peggy counted musical luminaries like the composer and conductor Leonard Bernstein among their friends. But St. Louisans may remember Bob Kline best as the owner of the Record Bar in Clayton.
People would go there and listen to music, and my father would try to wean them off of rock and roll and get them interested in classical music. And in fact, I've gotten letters from people, a few over the years, saying, "Are you the Kevin Kline whose father had the Record Bar in Clayton? Because if you are, I owe him a tremendous debt, because he taught me so much about classical music and actually got me interested in classical music, and it has, been a great part of my life, and I owe it all to him."
Peggy Kline was a music lover too, though not a musician herself.
Played no instrument, never even sang except for a little snatch of this or that as she listened to it, but loved opera, loved, in fact, I think it was music that when they first met, music brought my mother and father together.
Back in those days, to get to school, high school, they had a school bus.
Rick Meyer has been a close friend of Kevin Kline since the 9th grade.
But because we were close, and we lived close to one another, we spent time at his home. And his mom and dad were very unique, different, and challenging people. And that household really, I think, fostered a creative environment.
Bob and Peggy Kline pass along their appreciation of classical music to their children. They regularly took Kevin, his brothers, and sister to St. Louis Symphony concerts in the days the orchestra performed here at the Kiel Opera House. Kevin studied piano growing up, but a fateful decision he made about piano lessons at a critical point in his development may have altered the course of his future career.
I started actually when I was 7, and I studied with Edith Farbman, who was married to Harry Farbman, who was the concertmaster and assistant conductor of the St. Louis Symphony, and very close friends of my parents. And I didn't like it. After about a month, I said, I want to go out and play ball. And unfortunately, my parents didn't stand over me and, with a stick and make me practice. And okay, well, if you don't like it, then fine. So I gave it up. And then I went back to it when I was about 11 or 12.
Your seriousness toward the piano would be greater because you chose to go back, I would think.
Well, yeah. But meanwhile, I lost many, many years.
Kevin attended Rossman School when it was located on Del Mar in St. Louis. He and his fellow students were encouraged to work hard, be curious, and express themselves, provided that expression wasn't made at someone else's expense. Self-expression was never a problem for the charming young Kevin, but working hard sometimes posed a challenge, especially in the next phase of his educational career.
my years at Priory. I was there for 6 years, 7th grade to 12th grade. And it's sort of had the most dramatic, and I don't mean anything to do with the theater, but the most dramatic impact on my character forming. I was not a great student and didn't love, I liked languages. I did well in French and Latin.
He's quite right. He wasn't one of our star students. And I don't think he had sort of stellar ability, but he was quite bright and quite intelligent.
Father Timothy Horner was Kevin's headmaster at Priory.
And he had 1 year where he got a very, very critical report, I think, from his science teacher. And he obviously took that to heart. And he finished quite well. I mean, he was sort of, I think, in the middle of the class, roughly, which in our class was quite creditable.
The performing arts proved to be Kevin Kline's strength. He got a thumbs up at Priory for his performance in The Mostellaria, or The Haunted House, by the 2nd century BC Roman playwright Titus Maccius Plautus.
In Latin comedy, based on Greek comedy, the key character generally is the clever slave who sort of keeps the plot moving. And Kevin, of course, was Tranio, the clever slave. So he had really the lead part. I think it was his first sort of major acting part ever. So we kicked him off in that direction. And he was extremely good. I mean, he was obviously had great acting talent.
Kevin also played clarinet. At home, he had a garage band, and at school, a classical ensemble.
Schoolboys' concerts can be rather painful. Kevin was never painful on the clarinet. I mean, he played it really quite well.
Kevin was a natural athlete. He was a wide receiver on the varsity football team and played varsity soccer.
He was a very good soccer player. Kevin really, in a funny sort of way, and he'd probably be the first to tell you, probably didn't do a tremendous amount of athletics in like kids do today. But when he got to high school, he really sort of blossomed as an athlete. And the thing that was probably most surprising to everybody, he didn't play football in his first year maybe, and he became a very, very good football player. Some years after high school, he came back to St. Louis and we got together, and I said, why don't we go play some golf? He says, I don't play golf. And I said, well, let's just go out there and we'll just futz around for 9 holes and have lunch or something like that. And what was interesting, and I think this says a little bit about why actors are so good, is they can look at something and sort of watch something, and then they can imitate it or emulate it in some fashion. He literally got up there, never really having played golf, and was able to hit the ball with some degree of form just by just showing his athletic ability. But I think that also says something about his ability to act. He could watch something, imitate it, and perform it.
When the time came to submit college applications, this senior with lots of potential but not the best grades had a major reality check.
And of course I was comforted with the fact that, well, you know, this is the baby boom, you know, the war babies. It's the hardest year to get into any university because of the population. Oh, good, yeah. I feel much better. But I was rejected by Georgetown and Northwestern. I was going to go to Georgetown because the headmaster at Priory said, you know, you're very good at languages and you're very diplomatic, so you might consider School of Foreign Diplomacy at Georgetown. And I considered it. They didn't consider me, however. Neither did Northwestern, where I sort of was thinking I might, you know, they had a good music and acting program, and I sort of was thinking, I don't know, I'd go get a good liberal arts education and maybe try one of those two things. And then when those kind of fell through, I thought, you know what I really want? You know what if I could do whatever I want, I'd like to be a musician. It's a little late, and I haven't been practicing as hard as I might, but I applied to Indiana University, and my old piano teacher, Edith Farbman, from when I was 7 and quit, was on the faculty there, as was Harry, who was on the violin faculty. And the Farbmans arranged for me to audition, and I think maybe said a few nice things, and they took me sort of provisionally with the proviso that I go to summer school before I started to get some theory that I was lacking in. So I studied a lot of theory that summer and practiced like crazy.
And so he graduated from Priory, determined to take the teachings of the Benedictine monks and make the most of what awaited him in college.
He was a boy that I was very glad to have had in school, and I think I hope we did quite a lot for him.
For the next 2 years at Indiana University, Kevin Kline majored in music. But as he practiced intensely on the piano, Kline soaked in the wonders of other performing arts.
As a musician, I used to earn extra money by playing, just accompanying ballet classes in the ballet department. And so, and then I started going to ballets and fell in love with ballets. And then to earn some extra money, I also worked on the crew of the opera. Indiana University has to this day one of the best opera departments within the music school. It's just phenomenal, and they would do these extraordinary productions of operas, and I would work on the costume crew or the makeup crew. I used to make beards for all of the priests and the magic flute, or help people on with their costumes and things like that, and hear operas over and over and over and really get to know them. And so anyway, so ballet and opera and the theater. I started going to the theater at the university there.
The impact theater had on Kline prompted him to switch his major. The talented upperclassman distinguished himself in a variety of roles, and he co-founded a theater troupe called the Vest Pocket Players. The company performed satirical revues. Whenever Kevin Kline was home on a break from college, he would make a point of coming here to the Loretto Hilton Center in Webster Groves, home of the Repertory Theater of St. Louis.
They had just started up, and I would go religiously to see their plays, and they had a profound effect on me.
After he graduated from Indiana, Kline headed to New York. He performed a few minor roles with the New York Shakespeare Festival, then won a scholarship to the Julliard School, which had just formed a division for drama. There he came under the tutelage of the iconic actor and producer John Houseman. Not wanting to see his first class scatter among the country's regional theaters and Hollywood, Houseman turned those students into a professional repertory company. As a founding member of the acting company, Kline's work laid the foundation for the stardom that was just a few years away. Kline spent the next 4 years touring the country with his fellow Julliard graduates, performing works by Shakespeare, Chekhov, Soroyan, and other classic playwrights. There were musicals. This photo was taken by Kline's sister Kate on opening night of The Robber Bridegroom in October of 1975. After he left the troupe and the luxury of working with the same ensemble, Kline joined thousands of other actors in New York, making the rounds of auditions.
When I first had to audition for a musical, there was nothing more terrifying than standing up in a room and singing in front of 6 or 7 people. The producers, the director. Horrifying. Much easier to open on Broadway.
Years ago, I was in New York City celebrating a birthday with family, and what I wanted to do most was to see a new Broadway musical. It was based on a play and a movie, both produced in the 1930s, and the story was set on the legendary train, the 20th Century Limited. I could not wait to see Madeline Kahn in her portrayal of the fictional, very egotistical film star Lily Garland. But just before the lights dimmed, an announcement was made that Kahn's understudy would go on instead. I was crushed. You're probably wondering where I'm going with this, but just stick with me for a minute. So there I am sitting in my seat, very disappointed, until the curtain went up. The understudy was a marvel. She was Judy Kay, and she went on to become Broadway royalty. But there's more.
These are the tools you've got at your command.
I witnessed another spectacular performance in that show entitled On the 20th Century. Sharing the stage with Kay in the role of Lily Garland's handsome but self-serving lover, Bruce Granite, was none other than Kevin Kline. He stole the show and was rewarded with the 1978 Tony for Best Featured Actor in a Musical.
I am the pirate king, and it is a glorious thing to be a pirate king.
Kline won a second Tony for Best Actor in a Musical 3 years later for his portrayal of the Pirate King in The Pirates of Penzance. He's received 3 Drama Desk Awards for his stage work, the most recent for his role as Sir John Falstaff in Henry IV. And there's his 1988 Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in A Fish Called Wanda. His intellectually challenged hitman, Otto West, is one of the few comic performances to ever win an Oscar.
La mer, qu'on va danser le long des golfes clairs.
The scope of Kline's extensive film and legitimate theater resume makes him one of America's most versatile actors.
The array of things that he has done, I think, really says a lot about the man and his skill. And he was that way in his 20s.
Kline's reputation for turning down many offers of acting roles and requests for personal appearances has earned him the nickname Kevin Kline. But in spite of his busy schedule, this native son maintains his closest St. Louis connections. On September 12, 1997, a new theater built as part of an addition to Priory School was officially named in honor of Kevin Kline. During its construction, he made a point of visiting his alma mater to check on the theater's progress. The headmaster at the time was Father Gregory Mormon.
He's known for really promoting the accessibility of these Shakespeare in the Park and things like that so that young people can have an experience of the dramatic arts. So that's why I thought it was a really good fit for him to have this theater named after him. We used to have just a little black box theater up in another building, and it seated maybe 100 people, and everything was very low tech. And the creation of the Kevin Kline Theater really allowed us to take performing arts at Priory to a completely different level.
You got trouble! Oh, we got trouble! Right here in River City!
Among the beneficiaries of the Kevin Kline Theater is Priory senior Peter Walls. Here he's starring as Professor Harold Hill in The Music Man. Peter plans to double major in drama and business when he gets to college. Does that inspire you in any way? The fact that somebody from this school has gone on to such stardom?
It's a nice feeling to get to say in the Kevin Kline Theater we will be presenting a show, so it's a good thing.
At the same time the theater was dedicated, the actor after whom it was named gave a series of one-man performances of Shakespeare soliloquies for the Priory community.
So it was amazing, amazingly good. And when he was doing it for our supporters, I had to introduce him. And I said, amongst other things, if you give Kevin an A+ for his performance, which I'm sure you will, it'll be the first A+ he's ever had. And I think he remembered that and enjoys it still.
The best compliment I think Kevin could be paid by what he did at that performance was, he said, one of my students afterwards said, it was like a class. And I said, that's exactly what it was supposed to be like. I said, Kevin was trying to help you learn about Shakespeare, not just entertain you. And he was brilliant in doing that.
In November of 2002, during the St. Louis International Film Festival, Priory bused students here to the High Point Theater. They came for a screening of The Emperor's Club, starring the school's most celebrated alum.
Shutruk Nahunte, King, Sovereign of the land of Elam.
Kline, who was also at the screening, portrayed an educator who taught Greek and Roman history at an all-boys academy. He's called his performance an homage to the education he received at Priory. After the movie, everyone went back to school for a question-and-answer session. One of those questions involved a scene in which Kline's character is officiating an academic competition. Look closely at the ring on his left hand.
The second question the kids asked him was, "Is that your Priory ring?" And Kevin said yes, and the whole theater erupted in applause.
I have to tell you, though, that this is not this may be the first public Kevin Kline Award, but there have been Kevin Kline Awards for many years. Sadly, I've been the sole beneficiary of this award.
The Kevin Kline Awards were the brainchild of two St. Louis actors who were looking for a way to promote and grow St. Louis theater.
So to speak, the Ensemble Washington Avenue Players Project.
Using as a model Washington, D.C.'s Helen Hayes Awards, deciding after whom to name the St. Louis accolades was a no-brainer.
One day at lunch, I was talking to someone. They said, I think I know someone who was Kevin Kline's college roommate. And I said, oh, great. And they said, shall I call them? And I said, sure. Well, within a few hours, that person had called Kevin, and Kevin had said yes. So it was immediate. As soon as we found the contact, he jumped on the idea. He loved the idea, which shocked us.
I think we should.
And when he spoke that night, he just electrified the crowd. He just brought everybody to their feet. It was amazing. And I think he was really moved by the ceremony. I think he didn't quite realize what we had here.
The 2006 awards accomplished just what Steve Isom had hoped. The number of individual theater companies with productions that were judged rose from 23 in the inaugural year to 32 in 2007. And the audiences for many smaller theater companies grew dramatically after they garnered nominations and wins.
People are paying attention. There's growth. There's more shows. Audiences are getting bigger. There's a lot more press about theater. It's exciting. I think we're really going to become a regional theater center.
Everybody come footloose!
Kevin Kline's artistic contributions to the stage make him a natural for demanding parts like the title role in the Public Theater's 2007 production of King Lear in New York. His long and distinguished association with the Public Theater dates back to 1970, and he currently serves as an artistic associate and member of the Board of Trustees. But it would be inaccurate, as well as cliché, to say the theater is Kline's first love. That distinction belongs to his wife, actress Phoebe Cates, and their children. Son Owen and daughter Greta Simone are now teenagers.
It was, and it remains interesting to me, how determined in what is a real make-believe life that actors and actresses live, that they're so determined to live in as regular an environment as they can under the circumstances.
I have an extraordinary family, an amazing wife, which, we're so tired of hearing that. It says, oh, my beautiful children. It's like, who doesn't? But I really do.
Gorgeous. I mean,
she's also gorgeous, but she's also an extraordinary wife and mother, and I have these extraordinary children.
I'm sorry, no pictures. No. You mustn't. Go ahead.
Family, friends, an outstanding career, and a solid upbringing in St. Louis all contribute to a satisfying life for one of the finest actors of his generation.
It's very stimulating and very gratifying. I can work in the theater, I can work in films, and I love to work. My life is good.